What a hard act to follow. Congratulations to those two companies. We're BMR Group. What I want to do is tell you about us, the company, who we are, Jeremy and myself, because investment is all about management, what we do, and why you should have an investment in us. So first of all, BMR, we are on AIM. We have a market cap of £10 million. It's 174 million shares at 5.75p a share. We've got a large number of retail shareholders. We don't have institutional shareholders at the moment. One of the reasons for that is because we're an early stage mining company, unlike the company we saw before the break. We're a completely different type of business. Our base of operations is in Zambia, and we are in the natural resources sector. The natural resources sector is fairly broad and encompasses a large number of companies. At one stage of the mining operation, you have prospecting and exploration, which is a very expensive element of the mining sector. People can either find something or not find something. If they find something, they start drilling. Drilling is very expensive. RC and diamond drilling requires an awful lot of funds to be raised. If there is product at the end of the drilling with the core samples, then people build mines and start operating and get out the product. The product is then subject to the vagaries of the metal prices in the market. We are a processor of tailings, which is a byproduct of mining. This makes us a very low-risk business because all we're doing is putting tailings through a processing plant, producing metals at the end of it, and selling the metals. So it's a fairly low-risk opportunity for us in Zambia. To introduce ourselves, I'm Alex. I've been in investment banking for 20 years, floated a number of companies, raised money for a number of companies, and for the last 10 years or so, I've been a director of various companies. Some of you may know Metal Tiger and Greatland Gold. I'm a director of each of those, and we'd like, hopefully, to see good share price recovery in both of those. I joined BMR towards the end of 2014. There were, some of you may know, a certain amount of local difficulties that I had to sort out. We suspended the shares, got them relisted in May. The important thing for me was to, first of all, tidy it up for shareholders, then build up the team of people. The most important part of the team I have is Jeremy Hawke, on my left, mining specialist over a number of years, who started his career, so I understand, in Kabwe, by coincidence, where BMR is based. So Jeremy and I run the business, and we have managed now, I believe, to create a very successful opportunity for shareholders. Compared to many people in the mining sector, we also have a very low remuneration structure ourselves and for the people we have in the business. We had a big office that we inherited in Park Lane, which I've got rid of. We work out of a tiny little office in Piccadilly that costs just over £1,000 a month. So we have a very modest overhead base because the important thing for us is to create value for shareholders and not to line our own pockets. So what we're doing is creating value for all of you who are or who may be shareholders in the company. Is that the next? I thought it was going to be it's almost a picture of the bottom of the mine next door. How do we do that? Okay, so the key assets we have are tailings. This is the byproduct of mining, and we sit with those on the surface, on the ground surface at Kabwe. We hold those under license, and they're a byproduct of mining in Kabwe since 1906 through to 1994. So there's a huge volume of tailings. The dry tonnage is over 5 million tonnes of tailings. Part of the tailings have a JORC resource. Those are the wash plant tailings and the leach plant residues. We've also got another couple of million tonnes of Veltz kiln slag and Imperial smelter furnace slag. And we're looking to do things with both of those types of assets. So having a JORC compliant resource gives us value immediately. The non-JORC, as you can see there, and Jeremy will go through that in a bit more detail. So what do you do with these tailings? The important thing is you've got to find a process to convert them into metals. So we spent most of 2015 devising the methodology, put that into place. go through various testings in laboratory to make sure we can actually convert the tailings into metals. No point in having tailings that have got no value, you can't do anything with. And a lot of stories are told about tailings, but we have ended up with a process that generates lead and zinc at the end of it. And we're very pleased that the zinc price has continued to increase. I think it's about $2,500 a tonne at the moment, and lead is about $1,900 today. So we can produce two metals from our methodology that enable us to create a product that we can sell. So having developed the methodology, have we got permission to actually produce and go through the processing? Yes, we have. We submitted our environmental impact assessment through to ZEMA, the Zambian Environmental Management Agency, at the end of 2015. And they took time to review our process. And Kabwe is one of the most polluted places on Earth, as some of you may know. And the World Bank is focusing on that, where we have a link as well. So we have ensured that our processing methodology works, and the planning went into ZEMA, and we were granted approval in June 16 to process the tailings. So that's very good news. The next stage is, what do we do when we've got permission? Well, we've got to build a plant. So we're now in the process of building a plant. That won't be ready until 2017. We've got a peer review for the costing for the plant of $2.7 million. We're comfortable with that, and it's give or take a standard deviation in the market, which we've stated there. So we're now sourcing equipment, and we are confident that the plant is going to be up and running. Give us 12 months to do that. So what do we do when we have got the plant ready and we start producing product? Well, we sell it. How do we sell it? We've already got a customer. We entered into an offtake agreement, which is effectively a sale and purchase agreement for product. That's signed with the African Compass International. That's a South African agribusiness, and that's been a successful relationship from the start, because they have now given us the money through a loan facility of $5.2 million, which is a fundamental achievement for the company. We started with nothing. We've got assets, we've got a process, and now we've got the money to build the plant and to engage business. The products we're producing will be zinc lead and zinc sulfate dihydrate. Jeremy will tell you a little bit more about that. More of a mining expert than I am. So what do we do with the business after this? We don't want to stop just at Kabwe. I don't think our shareholders would just be interested in us only having tailings in Zambia. We want to expand the business where we see value-added opportunities for shareholders. So we announced an option to acquire something called Star Zinc. We acquired that for $30,000 from an Australian company called Bushbuck Resources. When we exercise that, that'll be a cost of $1 million to us. And part of the facility that we have of $5.2 million, $1 million is earmarked for exercising the option. So we expect to do that in the near future. That has, it's a mine. We've had a technical report, which is almost equivalent to a competent person's report, as some of you may know, from Wardell Armstrong. And it's very good quality zinc that we have there, which will enable us to increase the quality of the zinc output from the plant that we're building at Kabwe. So we see this as not only giving us a better quality product, but also extending the life of our operations at Kabwe. So it's another milestone for the company to have done this. The other two elements we have, in addition to the wash plant and leach plant residues, are the Veltz kiln slag and the ISF slag I mentioned. In terms of the Veltz kiln, we have been working on that to produce a product that is useful for the construction sector, which doesn't leach after the testing we've done. We've put in a submission to ZEMA, which is an environmental project brief, and we're in discussions with ZEMA at the moment. And to make you all insiders for a few hours, we'll be announcing tomorrow morning that ZEMA have said they want us to consider aspects of an environmental impact assessment of this. We're appealing against that, but it doesn't deter us. We still expect to get approval for selling the Veltz kiln slag in due course. And you'll see that announcement at 7 o'clock in the morning. So over to Jeremy to tell you a bit more about the business in detail.
Okay, thank you, Alex. I'm going to just talk briefly about the size of the assets we've got, the value of the assets, the company's strategy going forward, the process design, indicative OPEX and profitability of the company, and future developments. Now, just to talk about the JORC resource that we have, JORC compliant resource, which is very, very important to us because it does anchor the grade, it does anchor the tonnage, and we have developed our financial model around that. The wash plant tailings, which is the easiest of the 3 tailings sources that we're going to treat, comprises about 600,000 tons of material. It grades at 10.6% zinc and 7.2% lead. So turning that into metal, that's equivalent to 61,000 tons of zinc and 41,000 tons of lead. The leach plant residue is a much larger component. We have just over 2.6 million tons of that. The zinc grade is 3.8 and the lead grade is 8.7. Turning that into tons, 102,000 tons of zinc and 230,000 tons of lead. Now, the non-JORC resource is very much of interest to us. Alex has touched on the Voltskiln slag, which is low grade and doesn't warrant reprocessing. We couldn't do that economically. However, the Imperial Smelter Furnace slag is particularly interesting to us because it has over 8% of zinc still in the residue and 1.2% lead. So turning that again into metal, we have almost 120,000 tons of zinc to recover and approximately 18,000 tons of lead. So the 3 elements being the wash plant tailings, leach plant residue, and the Imperial Smelting Furnace slag are the focus of our attention. Now, just to give you a sort of a financial value on that, the JORC compliant element of our resource, the zinc is worth in situ, unprocessed, $360 million US, lead 510 million. So the total in terms of JORC is 870 million in situ at today's metal prices undiscounted. The non-JORC element is zinc, that is from the Imperial Smelting Furnace slag. The zinc is valued at 264 million and the lead 34 million. Total 298 million. So the indicative asset value we have sitting in tailings, which we are going to process, is 1.16 billion US dollars. Now, what we planned to do originally was to treat the wash plant tailings first. That plan has not changed. In the meantime, what we're doing, we have a continuous process of optimizing the leach and precipitation kinetics to improve recoveries and to maximize the return when we start processing. What is interesting to us as we've been doing this optimization work, we initially worked on a residence time in the leach and precipitation sections of about an hour. However, what has become apparent is that the actual leach time is substantially reduced on our original assumptions. That is going to work very much to our advantage because we should be able to ramp up the capacity of the plant reasonably easy and without a major redesign of the plant. The other interesting development is that originally we were able to recover zinc from the ISF slag, but at a massive consumption of acid. It really rendered the whole thing uneconomic. However, we have looked at blending the ISF slag with the leach plant residue material we've got. And I can say at this stage that we are quite encouraged with the results that we're getting back. And certainly we believe that we're going to be successful in this particular effort that we're going through to right now. This is quite important because I'll explain that in a little bit more detail as we go through this presentation. Let's just talk quickly about our process, which I think might interest a few of you. All of the work we do, all of the metallurgical test work we do, and all of the results are peer-reviewed by a gentleman who is the head of the minerals section in the Institute of Mining Metallurgy, Tony Francis. I've known Tony for many years, a very, very competent metallurgist, and he goes through all of the results we do. So we have the checks and balances in place as we progress down the road with our process. Of course, the viability of this project hinges on the ability of the plant to recover the metal and then turn it into an economic, saleable product. The plant design was originally conceived by a small consulting company in South Africa called Kupfermelt, and they have successfully turned their concept into a plant. Now I must hurry on because I've got 4 minutes left. The net result is we are going to produce zinc cathodes to LME standard. We're going to produce what we call ZSH, zinc sulfate heptahydrate, and we're going to produce lead sponge, 96% lead. Now, I'll quickly explain a little bit about the ZSH, zinc sulfate heptahydrate. It is an agricultural blend, fertilizer. It has a content of 20% zinc, and that means we get considerable uplift because in Zambia it sells at $1,350 a ton. So every ton of zinc, we can chop it into 5 pieces, make zinc sulfate heptahydrate, and get a substantial uplift. Finally, just to talk about the recoveries in the wash plant tailings, we get 80% of the zinc out and 90% of the lead. How are we doing? Okay. OPEX. Let me touch very briefly on that. And I'm talking the wash plant tailings only. We will recover, in terms of value, $114 million of zinc and $72 million of lead. However, we're going to assign 60% of the zinc to producing zinc sulfate heptahydrate. So that means we can expect a substantial uplift. Now, the net result is the zinc, which sits at 114 million, suddenly uplifts to 250 million. So we put the 250 million plus the lead, and the overall production is worth 322 million. These are indicative figures of dollars. So the EBITDA is, after we take out the OPEX and we take out the marketing costs for the wash plant tailings only, is approximately 140 million US. Production of the plant starts mid-2017. Finally, I'll touch very quickly on one of the exciting things that we have, and that's the acquisition of the Star Zinc mine. It's been described as a high-grade, structurally controlled willemite deposit, which, when you interpret it, it means that nobody understands how this mineralization came about. They don't know the source. Anyway, one important thing is an observation in the minor depositor article titled Carbonate-Hosted Willemite Deposits in the Zambezi Metamorphic Belt suggested that the whole thing is underlain by a massive sulfide deposit, which is very similar to how the Kabwe mine was found in the first place. So I think I'm out of time. I'll turn over to Alex and he can complete the presentation.
You'll be sent the presentation with the rest of those slides. I just want to tell you what we've achieved because, as I say, for shareholders, we had almost a moribund company and value was lost. What we've done is been able to go through the tailings to assess that we can produce something out of them. We've got a processing methodology in place. We've worked out with the Veltskiln slag, we can sell that into a viable product. We've raised money. Some of you may know that I negotiated a settlement agreement with the previous management. We've got £1 million into the company. That enabled us to get listed or relisted. We've raised small amounts of money, 400,000 and 400,000 twice, 3p and 4.25p. That gave us sufficient cash for the accounts and for operating overhead and to get started, to employ consultants and to develop the processing. We've got approval from ZEMA for building the plant. We've started building the plant. We've signed the offtake agreement, and we've got the $5.2 million of loan facility. I mean, these are phenomenal achievements, believe me. It's taken an awful lot of work from very few people to have achieved this. I know some shareholders are grateful because I do get messages from you. So what are our future milestones? What are we going to announce next? That's what everybody asks me. Well, of course, we can't tell you that except for the one that's going out tomorrow morning. But we expect to exercise the Star Zinc option. That is announced, that it's there with us to exercise. ZEMA at some stage will give their approval for the sale of the Veltskiln slag. We obviously have to announce our results. Our year end is June 16. And we have given shareholders who participated in the placings warrants. Now, those warrants are to subscribe for new ordinary shares at 7p a share. That gives you an indication that we expect the share price to be above that. In fact, you're probably sitting on WH Ireland's research note, which was written in November before certain of these milestones were achieved. That gives us an indicative price of 10p a share. So we think the indicative price is much greater than that. So we've commissioned, the next stage is when the plant is built, it has to be formally commissioned. And from that date on, we can start selling. And we're also looking at other opportunities. So keep an eye on the RNSs. So why you should invest in us? Well, we have significant assets. We've got an asset value per share, which underpins the value of the company and the share price. We've got the methodology and ZEMA approval, which I keep going on about. So we're well financed, and we've got many years to go through building up value for shareholders. And I believe we have a strong management team for you. So BMR, I'm sure, should stand for Buy More Shares for Recovery. Thank you.
Questions, anybody? Gentleman just there.
Just to go into the cash, I should say the Star Zinc strategy as far as the large-scale license you've got in Kabwe, which is your preferred option? Star Zinc would appear to be, but if I'm not mistaken, there still is substantial resources available with several areas of a large-scale license that's under BMR's control.
We've got significant resource to keep us going for a number of years with the Kabwe asset as it stands, but the wash plant tailings will be processed first, and those have high-grade metals within them. When we start working through to the leach plant residues, then we would look to have some of the resource from the Star Zinc. So Star Zinc adds to the pot from a couple of years from now, and that will enable us to extend the life of the mine. So the concentration is on the wash plant tailings at Kabwe to begin with.
Just to add to the question, we do know there are additional reserves of zinc from previous work that was carried out by a number of exploration companies in the large-scale mining license. We're looking at that right now.
Question at the back.
Alex, congratulations on doing a good job turning the company around. Couple of questions for you, toughies. What's your cost of production estimated? What's going to be your dividend policy? Saw the previous company, how the share price grew because they've got a policy in place of saying 20% of revenue. I know you're not producing revenue, but a policy would be darn good. And then thirdly, what's the issue with Zima in building the concrete blocks?
Thank you. I mean, first of all, on the dividend policy, we're away from that. We've got to spend the money that we've got on building the plant and getting into operation. We've got the Star Zinc acquisition to bed down. Then we have a pile of negative reserves on the balance sheet, and that has to be addressed before we have distributable reserves to be able to pay dividends. We do not have a formal dividend policy yet. It's a bit early stage for that, but our intention is to pay dividends when we can do so, no question. In terms of the other two, the cost of production, which Jeremy did mention, do you want to continue with that?
Yeah, just to quickly wrap up, we announced that it was at pilot plant stage 150 US per tonne of tailings treated. However, obviously, scale of tonnage we expect to bring this number down. We can't say where, but I think realistically we could be pretty close to about $100 a tonne.
And sorry?
Concrete block
Zima.
Zima.
What's the problem with Zima? I think Zima. The expression we use quite a bit is if Zima say to us, as they did for the application for the processing plant, was it's going to take a formal 60 days. It didn't take 60 days. It took 6 months to get that through. So the aspect of our involvement is TIA, and that relates to quite a lot of businesses that operate in Africa, this is Africa. So Zima, we have a consultant who used to work at Zima who advises us on our submission. And he has had it in very high authority with Zima that we would be able to get the sale permission through with the EPB. We haven't achieved that yet, but we expect to do so. But even if we have to do the EIA, part of the EIA work is being done in conjunction with what we're doing with the building of the pilot plant. And we got to go through all the environmental stuff, as we heard from Central Asia too. So it's a very matching compliance that's necessary for both. So we think that Zima are going to listen to our appeal and we'll be able to start selling. But that doesn't spoil our valuation or spoil us in our tracks at all. It's an additional source of revenue for us if we can achieve it, but it's only small revenues. But there's nothing wrong with the construction blocks. But thank you for your questions.
Alex and Jeremy, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.